Welcome back to Wake Up Woodward. We are live at Feldman Chevrolet of Novi. It is Michigan's #1 Chevy dealer. We're here.
Yes.
Big D Energy will be here.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys should get down here as well. Take a car for a spin. Get your next car here at Feldman Chevrolet of Novi. Good people. They treat you right. And as Flannel can attest, the process is not that long.
No, I forgot who it was in the chat. They kind of questioned 3.5 hours, like that's a long time. For buying a car,
no, it's
sometimes
not.
you got to come in multiple times.
Yeah.
You don't see anything you want.
It's
you
an
can't find a
all-day
good
process.
Deal. 3.5 hours is nothing for buying a car.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. And you know what? We got to talk about these Detroit Pistons. But first, shout out to Matt Broder, our brother, man, our credentialed Tigers
Matt
Lions
Bro.
reporter. He is out today. Just needed a break, man.
Yep.
Needed a rest. That's what you have to do sometimes. And with the Woo crew, this is why we got the starting 5 plus a 6-man. Hey, we got you, brother. Rest up,
Sir.
and we will see you tomorrow. Definitely. But Jaden Ivey, and you know what? Let me go back to this comment because I saw it in the chat. I had to screenshot it because it's kind of perfect for what we're going to talk about. So we'll go there. Then I'll kind of bring up some of this Pistons news, and then we'll get into the Jaden Ivey conversation. But Wheezy D313 said, let's talk about how where is it at? He said that Jaden Ivey is better than Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. And I don't know if this is necessarily a case for Jaden Ivey of if he's a better player than them.
Yeah.
But is he the best fit in that starting lineup? All we've been talking about with Cade Cunningham is making sure that we put the right amount of shooting around Cade Cunningham. And I think Ivey he made some strides last year to show he could be a reliable shooter. But I want to get into that talk. But first, we kind of got to go through some of this news. The Pistons, they claimed forward center Paul Reed off waivers from the Philadelphia 76ers. Want to get you guys' first reactions on that.
Yeah, so with Paul Reed, you basically got a forward/undersized center. He's not really much of a shooter, although on low volume, he does actually shoot a pretty good percentage. 21 for 57 on the year in total. But with Paul Reed, what he's going to bring you is, I would say, on a per-size basis, on a per-minutes basis, he's would come in and be one of the best rebounders on the team.
Yeah,
Maybe your second best rebounder after Jalen Duren, because he averaged 6 rebounds a game in 19 minutes. On a per 36 minutes, he's got 11 rebounds a game, which is great. He can finish at the rim. As I said, not much of a shooter, but he plays defense. He hustles. He does a lot of the dirty work thing that role players come in and do. And I think that's something that might be missing on this Pistons team. So Paul Reed, I don't hate it at all. It could be one of those diamond in the rough things that turns out to be more important than you even realize at the time.
Yeah, and I get it. Another undersized, kind of big.
Yeah.
But he's one of those guys, whereas with Isaiah Stewart, we kind of are left with this desire that we wish he was a little bit taller.
Yeah.
Or we wish he had a longer wingspan.
Wish he was a baller.
I don't. He's a baller, but I don't walk away with that feeling when you look at Paul Reed play. It looks like he's a guy that might be 6'10", 6'11", with how effective he is in the paint. And I like his ability to finish floaters. I like his ability to finish, off the backboard, his ability to dunk the ball. And when you talk about the types of guards that we now have, he's one of those guys that will cut.
Yeah.
He'll move. He'll fill the open space. You talk about a Cade Cunningham and how much we see him have success with Jalen Duren, who I believe is still learning the instincts of both defense and offense. Paul Reed already has that instinct. Not as athletically gifted, not as talented as a Jalen Duren, but he kind of understands where to be on the court, and he uses his athleticism to his advantage.
Plays with an edge. He was a very capable backup behind Embiid. We seen him in the regular season and also the playoffs make plays here and there. He was also a G League MVP for whatever that accounts for. But, he's a guy that's going to come in. He's going to help you, especially a little bit defensively. Like I said, I worry about the shooting and the fact that he's undersized. If you're going to keep a guy like this on the roster, then what does that mean for Beef Stew? Because he is a better shooter, so I would rather have him, in that role as well. But, I'm going to let you get into that.
Oh, no. You make some great points. And I was just going to say to the, to the G League MVP thing, for a guy like Paul Reed, when a guy like that wins it, it's because he outworked everybody else, regardless of the talent. There were a lot of talented players in the G League. I don't know how many people had Paul Reed on the bingo card for G League MVP. And so I do believe that what you take from that is that this guy is one of those guys that's going to work for his opportunities, and he's not going to stop.
Yeah.
That's the identity we want. In addition to the edge. I'm so glad you brought that up, too, because the Pistons didn't have a lot of that last year. We know what Beef Stew brings. We know there's sometimes when Jalen Duren and Cade Cunningham can kind of chirp, but they didn't really have that edge as it relates to how they play the game. And he's one of those guys that brings that edge. So
Well, that's why in a perfect world, And I understand that if I had to choose between Paul Reed and Beef Stew, I would pick Beef Stew because he shoots better on a higher volume, and he's kind of similar in a way that undersized big who's an effort guy can play defense. Although I don't think he's quite as good at that as Paul Reed. The shooting makes up for it.
Yeah.
To me, I want to keep both of them.
Yeah.
I want to maybe have a second unit at times where you can put Isaiah Stewart at the 4 and Paul Reed at the 5. I don't think that that's crazy.
It's not. It's what their skill sets and their traits kind of lend towards. Beef Stew as a stretch 4 and Paul Reed being able to kind of do a lot of the dirty work aggressively in the ways that we want to see out of a Pistons big man. So I like that. And just a side note here, the Detroit Pistons Summer League is going to get underway. Vegas Summer League starts Thursday. I know a lot of people are getting in. Thursday, the Pistons' first game is Saturday night. I think it starts at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. With their roster, obviously Marcus Sasser's on there, Ron Holland II is on there, and Bobby Clintman. Those are your first and second round picks this year. The notable omission is Ausar Thompson. A lot of people are like, what? Why no Ausar? I honestly would be very, very cautious with him this summer, understanding that he was dealing with the blood clot issue that pulled him out of the rest of the season.
Just earlier this year.
Yep. So I would be safer than sorry. I don't think you need Ausar Thompson there. Working on his shooting, I don't think that I'm taking anything away from his game if he plays in Summer League.
Yeah, no. I mean, and Ausar Thompson, as much as he was a morbid three-point shooter, there's no other way to put it, I think his game in all other facets is probably too advanced to be playing in the Summer League. There were points during this season until his brother Amin really emerged and I'd say had the better year where we were talking about Ausar Thompson where, oh my goodness, maybe he can be all-rookie second team. And that didn't materialize, of course, and a lot of that had to do with a blood clot. But the problem with Ausar Thompson, if he could develop a shot, we're like, man, he could be one of our cornerstone pieces moving forward. But it's a big if because obviously you can't be shooting in the teens from three-point.
No, you can't. And I know we're going to get the legend on, so I want to be able to include him a little bit more in this conversation with Jaden Ivey. But I do want to be able to get into it, just kind of start the conversation for a few minutes, get to break, get Rod on, and we'll really dive into it because Jaden Ivey is the guy. You know, just to kind of tee back up, Weezy D313, thank you for the comment as well. And yes, I do believe that Jaden Ivey is a very, very talented player. I'm very bullish on what I think Jaden Ivey can be. But the number one question following Jaden Ivey, even more so than his defense and his three-point shooting, is his fit next to Cade Cunningham in the lineup. And sometimes, yes, three-point shooting is going to play a role. But if he played to his absolute best, his strengths, I believe that he would still be a good fit next to Cade Cunningham. But we're not seeing him finish at the rim at an efficient enough number. We saw the mid-range game tail off versus what he was doing last season, towards the end of last season. So some of the other things that can make up for a lack of shooting, you know, getting to the free throw line at a great rate, those are the things that we need to see out of Ivey at the very least, and we haven't seen it. That would make him at least a decent fit next to Cade. And then when you add that three-point shooting element, it makes him a good fit next to Cade.
Yeah, and that's what we were going to talk about. And Shad actually put something in the chat that I agree with, and I like to point that out because we've been pretty adversarial at times. He mentioned about Jaden Ivey potentially being the starting pseudo point guard on the second unit. And that's where I think would be the best fit, at least at the beginning of the year. Maybe have a lineup of him, Tim Hardaway Jr., maybe a Ron Holland, maybe a Fontecchio if he doesn't start, a Isaiah Stewart, Paul Reed, however you want to mix up the forwards. Obviously, Fontecchio's going to get I'd like to see him get starters minutes and maybe see him start, but that's kind of up for the coach to decide on the second unit, whether you want Holland, whether you want Ausar Thompson, whether you want Fontecchio, whether you want Paul Reed, whether you want Isaiah Stewart. But the point is that still at this point in Jaden Ivey's career, he's shown that he's a better on-ball player than off-ball. But I want Cade to be on the ball. I want Jaden Ivey to develop more of an off-ball skill set, to become a better shooter, which for the record, he's not as bad as people say. He's not Ausar Thompson.
Hoping that with all the speed he has, with the athleticism he has, that he's one of those guys that can tend more towards a Dwayne Wade type, archetype of player. He's one of those guys that use his speed in space, whether he had the ball or not. And that, to me, is, aside from like the three-point percentage going up, that's where I believe that Jaden Ivey can really make kind of that next great step to be a good fit next to Cade Cunningham. Use your elite speed. Get in space. Get to that mid-range. Get to the rim. He's got to put himself in a better position.
And we all know he has all the athleticism in the world, and Dwayne Wade is a really good comparison. But what's one thing Wade could do exceptionally? Finish at the rim.
Yep.
And that is one thing that he can get to the rim. That's not the problem.
Finish,
it's the finishing percentages, man, and also his three-point percentage just isn't conducive to him being in the lineup at this point. Now, can he get there? I do believe so, but just as of right now, you have better veterans that are more suited and more capable to fitting around Cade and facilitating that type of play style. Sam brought it up as well. I'm not ready to facilitate the offense through Jaden Ivey and have Cade off ball just yet, even though it can work that way. I would much rather Jaden Ivey work on his game, get a more consistent three, be a better finisher at the rim, and then maybe we can talk about him getting those starter minutes.
Yep. Yeah, I agree, and that's why I wanted the conversation to be a little bit less about what he is as a three-point shooter and a little bit more of how much he'd help this squad tomorrow, bro. If a lot of the things that we thought he would bring day one were actually up to par, and you stated it very, very well. Let's unless you have another comment, we'll get the legend on the line.
Oh,
we'll continue this.
Sir.
Can't wait to talk to
Jaden Ivey kind of conversation, because you're right. There are now log jams at areas that we thought, the Pistons got to improve at wing. They got to improve with the big men. They got to improve with their guard set. Now you got a log jam in a couple of these positions, and Jaden Ivey is going to be, I think, one of those players that you got to answer the most questions about. So, what business do we have to take care of? JB Smooth.
KDK.
KDK.
Oh, yes. Good thing that I'm not improvising it today. Dealing with divorce, child custody, visitation, or other family.
What up, though, people? Welcome back to Wake Up Woodward. We are live at Feldman Chevrolet of Novi. It is Michigan's #1 Chevy dealership. We got the Wake Up Woodward crew as well as Big D Energy broadcasting live from here today. Hey, get down here, say what up to the crew, say what up to one of the salesmen here. Test drive a car, buy you a car, get you a good deal. Right?
Be like me. Be like Broder, too. Matt Broder did that as well.
Shout out to Broder, man. Shout out to the whole entire Woo crew. Broder is taking a day off today. He will be back tomorrow. And then, obviously, we got a Friday show coming up, too.
I think he went to find Lizzie. That's where
Lizzie
Broder. That's what Lizzie. That's what Broder's doing right now.
Yeah. We saw him on the show yesterday after we brought up Lizzie, and it was just like, you know what? You could see it in his eyes.
He was glowing.
He was literally glowing.
It reminded me of all of the times I fumbled in my early and mid-20s.
Yeah.
It's until I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again. Until you find the one, those things haunt you, man.
Shout out to Easy, dog. Speak Easy is in the chat. I'm going to read this. Broder knocked me up and quit paying child support. Shout out to Easy. But let's get I know we get the legend on the line. I want to get Rod's thoughts, get into our Woodward Pistons segment, and then we get into our Around the City with the Detroit news as well. After that, talk a little Lions, Red Wings, and Tigers with Rod Beard.
Yeah.
But we're going to get the drum roll going. We'll get him in here, get Rod's thoughts, and then we got to talk to him about Jaden Ivey and the Pistons starting lineup. So, hey, you guys ready?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Hey, yo. Shout out and welcome to the legend, Detroit News, Rod Beard. Brother, how are you doing today? And take it away with Rod's thoughts.
Gentlemen, it must be Wednesday. But NBA free agency still is absolutely the best of all of the free agency. Yeah, I don't care what people say about the NFL. We know it's not the NHL or MLB. But you got Klay Thompson in a Mavs uniform. What are we doing? You got Chris Paul going to the Spurs.
Wow.
It's like you're playing musical chairs with teams, and then people just end up in the weirdest places. And I'm not saying it's not going to fit. I like Klay positionally and where he would play in Dallas, but it's just weird. Just people that you've known to be in certain jerseys for their entire careers moving to different places. And so it'll create some storylines, definitely.
It would definitely create some storylines. And it was. I know JB Smooth is over here in the TD space today, and he's a Golden State Warriors supporter. And just seeing Klay Thompson and this Warriors team start to break down, this legendary Warriors team start to break down, it's been tough on him. He's over here shaking his head in despair right now. It is. It's going to be weird. You know, Klay Thompson with the Dallas Mavericks, they're a squad that were just in the finals. Hopefully he can help put them over the top.
Hopefully he doesn't become like Patrick Ewing on the Magic or Hakeem Olajuwon on the Raptors. I don't think he will. I think Klay has more game left in him than those respective players did, but you always run that risk when you change teams like that late in your career.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, if you're choosing, do you identify Draymond as a Warrior more than Klay as a Warrior? That's a legit question.
Damn.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's tough.
That's a legit one. Rank the Warriors.
The same, right?
They have to be.
Yeah.
That's like trying to, in some parts, separate. When you think about that going to work Pistons squad.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really difficult to say which one was the one or which one was above the other.
I mean, they'll probably both be in the Hall. I mean, Klay Thompson definitely. Draymond, they'll
He's a
probably
Hall of
both be in the
Famer.
Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, that's a good question, though, man.
Yeah, great question.
That's one we're going to have to discuss on the show a little bit later. But
You got to get Rod back
Gonna
on.
get him back
Call
on.
dropped.
yeah, no, definitely. Because what I want to be able to do is I want to ask him about Jaden Ivey. That's what I'm going to do. And this Detroit Pistons starting lineup. And I think that's the nuanced way I want to be able to ask about his opinions, because I don't think that there's too many people who believe that Jaden Ivey is a bad player.
I'm not available to take your call, but please.
All right, we're going to figure out what's
We're gonna get
going
him
on
back
with that.
on the line.
Technical difficulties.
That's all right.
Yeah, because I don't think that there's a lot of people out there who believe that Jaden Ivey is a bad player. And, shout out to Speakeasy who's in the chats. This one thing that he's been talking about for a while is the fit with Jaden Ivey next to Cade Cunningham. And I don't know if it's necessarily a Cade Cunningham specific thing or not, but just in general in this lineup. So I'm hoping I see KG talking to Rod now. We'll try and get him back on here soon, because I'm really intrigued to see what his opinion is on this starting lineup for the Detroit Pistons moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking like right now that obviously it's going to be Cade, and then either Tim Hardaway Jr. or Malik Beasley at the 2. And that's the
Let's ask
Rod
Rod.
Beard.
Let's
Yeah.
ask Rod. Hey, Rod,
Hey.
you back with us, brother?
Yep, got you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Look, man, we've been talking about Jaden Ivey. We're looking at all of the additions that Trajan Langdon and the Detroit Pistons front office has made. And they've made some pretty shrewd moves. Shout out to Blackstone in the front office, who has been helping Trajan Langdon a lot with the cap space management. But Jaden Ivey, man, Jaden Ivey is the guy who I'm just like, okay, what's happening with this Pistons squad, especially when you think about the starting lineup? Is he a guy that is still destined, as we once believed to be the starting 2 guard for this squad? Or do you see things shaking out a little bit different for this Pistons starting lineup this season? And I guess kind of a follow-up is, what role do you see for Ivey?
I think right now he's a 6th man for me, because I want to get off to a good start. I want the leadership of a Malik Beasley or a Tim Hardaway Jr. to start the season instead of the other way around. And if you start Ivey and things don't go well, then you go to your vet. I think you let Ivey figure it out. And not to say that he's a rookie and he doesn't know what he's doing, but in a 6-man role, I think he can give you the energy off the bench. And I think with Cade specifically, you need that shooting around him to start the game. I like the look of that a little bit more, and I know people think a little bit different. When I put the question out on Twitter yesterday, people were all over the place about Ivey has to start. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think he can be an effective 6-man and provide some energy off the bench.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you stated that, because I did. As soon as I saw your post yesterday on X, I sent it to the crew and I said, you know what, we got to talk to Rod about this on Wake Up Woodward during our Woodward Pistons segment. And you had some pretty cool wing combinations. Do you have the results, or at least how that shook out? And what's your combination for this Detroit Pistons starting lineup?
Mine is Beasley Fontecchio. If Beasley can start for Dallas, he can start for me. That's just how it works. I think he's or start for the Bucks. I'm sorry. If he can start for them, he can start for me.
Yeah.
And Hardaway, same sort of deal. If he can start enough games for them, what's to say that he can't start for the Pistons and provide some of that same experience, that same three-point shooting? I think that's the biggest thing. You can come with the second unit and have the other be the three-point shooter with Ivey kind of directing that group with Sasser in the backcourt. I think that's a different formula that I would see working out a little bit better.
I am so glad that you mentioned Malik, because you kind of mentioned one of the same points that I've been thinking of when it comes to Malik Beasley. He's a guy that started 79 games on the Bucks last year. He does shoot the three ball better throughout his career than Tim Hardaway Jr. If you can play on a starting lineup with Giannis, with Brook Lopez, with Chris Middleton, with Dame Lillard, a team that would have gone farther in the playoffs if it weren't for Giannis being hurt, you can start for the Detroit Pistons. And conversely, Tim Hardaway Jr. only started 12 games, and he was out of the rotation come playoff time. I'm not saying I don't want him on the Pistons. Glad to have him. It's just, if it were me, I would probably agree with your wing combination and put Beasley and Fontecchio, and then Tim Hardaway Jr. be the two guard off the bench.
And you know what? I like that. I like that. Fontecchio, because we were talking about it a little bit during the break, and I was like, you know what? the discernible skills of a Beasley beyond just shooting, is it enough in that starting lineup? And it's like, if it's enough for the Bucks, it's definitely enough for the historically bad Detroit Pistons. And when you talk about adding a Fontecchio to this lineup all season, not the 16 and 19 games that he played last year, you're talking about a whole lot more shooting in this lineup right now, and that's where things get interesting with the Jaden Ivey. And I saw somebody saying, I wish I had the comment, they said that the three-point shot has broken basketball. And I think that it's challenging players more. In the past, you could rely on a lot of the skills that Jaden Ivey had and get by. In the past, you could rely on, we talked about Andre Drummond being a big man who maybe 20 years ago, perfect era for him, but he got caught in the switch. And we saw, if you can't find a way to evolve and adapt, it's going to leave you behind. Jaden Ivey, though, has enough skill, and he's shown me enough that I do believe he will thrive. But as a six-man role, if you tell him right now this is your discernible role and your discernible skill, go out there and work at it. When you come in, be that Jake Crawford, be that absolute just barn burner for us, I do believe that could be a good role for him. Yeah. I'm still for him starting.
14 points at your sixth spot is not bad at all.
It's not. It's not. And you
but
know what?
Here's the other thing, though. Why would you go out and get Beasley and Hardaway if you weren't going to start one of them? You go and get two very solid wings, and you're going to still just start Ivy? That doesn't make sense to me. And in terms of the salaries, you didn't pay a ton. It's not like going to get Tobias Harris and you have to start him because you're paying him that number.
Yep.
But if you're going to get two vets, is it to back up Ivy? Possibly, but I think you want to be solid. And judging by what Trajan Langdon's comments were in his presser, it was, we need vets to augment this young roster. You can't have a ton of young guys running the show here. You need a few guys to sprinkle in that starting lineup to give them some leadership and to make those games closer early on.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that really quickly, that was one of the things we talked about with Trajan Langdon is how does he see this roster? He's not connected to any of these young guys. We knew that Cade Cunningham was going to get that contract because he's connected to the organization. But Trajan Langdon's able to come in here and assess with unbiased, non-connected eyes to these young players that were brought in here via the previous regime and just make the actual best decision for the basketball team. Yeah.
Yo, and Rod, one of the things that I like is in real time, the gears were kind of shifting in my head on this. You think about the Pistons and their depth, given the fact that they just added Paul Reed yesterday. I start to think, and if we're assuming we're going off of the Beasley-Fontecchio wing pairing, you've got on the bench, you've got Asar Thompson, you've got Ron Holland, you've got Paul Reed, you've got Beef Stew, you've got Marcus Sasser, you've got Jaden Ivey, you've got guys who have shown skill sets in the NBA or are top 5 draft picks. My question is there going to be an odd man out by the time the season starts?
Yes,
and
question. What this suggests to me is there's going to be a trade, because now with all the people you've mentioned, you can't have an 11-man rotation.
Right.
Who's the odd man out in that? And if there are 11 people, there's some kind of trade coming or something. It just smells like that. That maybe one of the young guys, maybe you just say, hey, Holland is just not going to be in the rotation. He'll get spot minutes here and there. Maybe that's the answer to this thing. But this looks like there's some type of trade, and maybe you move one of the younger guys, maybe Thompson, maybe Ivy, maybe somebody else like that. I don't know. I don't have any inside info, but I'm just saying, I'm guessing, looking by the number of people and which people they brought in, there's going to be an odd man, maybe two out in the way this is set up.
Man, and you know what? And with this Jaden Ivey conversation, just to kind of put a bow on it, I'm not putting a cap on his ceiling, but I'm also glad that Trajan Langdon is doing something a little bit better than we saw out of the Pistons last year. The Pistons just seem to say, you know what, we're just assessing these young guys again, and they didn't do a lot to put them in a position to thrive, to succeed. What if Jaden Ivey in a 6-man role gets the opportunity to starting off on the bench, learn by seeing other experienced players ahead of him doing it the right way, and then get the opportunity to come in with a little bit less stress and pressure that goes on with starting, and is able to find a role that he's able to grow into, even if that's eventually a starter. And so I'm glad that Trajan Langdon is able to come in here with the eyes that he has, and is just able to say, you know what, let's put these guys in their best positions. I don't care if you're a starter or if you're not a starter. And I think you needed a guy like that who was disconnected from the situation, a part of other winning organizations, to come in with his eyes, assess what's here, and say, you know what, this is what needs to be.
Yeah,
good, KG.
Big facts. Rod, I actually have two questions for you. The first one being, with all the moves that Trajan has made so far, how would you grade the Pistons offseason up until this point?
I would say a strong B. I mean, they didn't, and we talked about this for most of the spring. I wanted a big Zach LaVine type thing, and you see the rest of the league isn't touching any of that contract type stuff with LaVine anyway. We talked about Tobias. They've spent the money well. Positionally, they've got the needs that they needed to fill and haven't broken the bank to do it and haven't really gotten a long-term deal. I think, and you mentioned Michael Blackstone, I think they've done smart things. Are they going to go out and win 40 games?
Probably not.
Maybe not with this roster, but they've done smart things. So I will give them a B on just this is a better roster going out into the start of the season, assuming this is it. But
all right.
If they do nothing else, this is a B.
All right, and then my second question was J.B. Bickerstaff. He's having his press conference today. Is there anything in particular that you would like to hear from J.B. Bickerstaff, and do you think that there's a particular direction he should take with this team?
No, I don't think there's anything in particular I want to hear. I think it's just sort of the same thing that Langdon laid out, was that this is going to take time. There isn't some, hey, we're ready to go and we out here about to hit the play-in. I don't want to hear that. But I want to hear, hey, we're going to take these young guys and work with them and mold this into a team that the city can be proud of. Give me one sentence like that and I'm good.
Yeah. Great questions by KG and great answers by Rod. Rod, do we have you for a few more minutes?
Yeah, we do. We can do it.
All right, cool. Hey, let's take care of some business. Right quick, JB, who do we have to what bills do we got to pay? And then we'll get back and do our Around the City with Rod Beard. Maybe talk a little bit of Detroit Lions, Tigers, and if anybody has any Red Wings questions. Guardian Alarm. Hey, listen, let Guardian Alarm offer you customized solutions from real experts. Our professional technicians, they take the time to recommend security and automation solutions specific to your needs. It's 24/7 professional.